In this, the third video about academic writing, we're going to look at argumentative essay writing, which we should be spending most time on because it's going to be appearing in the exam. Firstly, let's look at general methodology. The teacher will present ideas and aspects about different essays, and we'll use worksheets, for example. And the student should observe and analyze from these worksheets or from further worksheets to give them practice in the concepts which have been presented. But then the students can go away and research examples from the internet. Then they can come back and they can present their findings. They could present their findings orally as a presentation, or they could present their findings in a poster, which is practice for their later poster presentation. Then students need to practice writing essays and practice again and again. So let's look at essay structure. This is one thing we need to introduce to our students. And this is the rough kind of essay structure which we're going to use and which they're going to use in the examination. So obviously the essay needs a title, it needs an introduction and clear body paragraphs, up till 3. Sometimes only 2 will be required, but we need to think about whether 3 are needed. And then a clear conclusion. And these all need to be separate paragraphs. And you should think about separating the paragraphs with a blank line to make it clear that the paragraph is a paragraph and not just a continuation of the previous paragraph. This is especially true if you don't use indentation at the first line for the paragraphs. Let's look at understanding the question now, and this is key. Now, we don't have examples of the examination questions yet. So this has been recorded before we have these examples. So all we can look at are previous year 12 examples. And so I've taken the previous year 12, 3 previous year 12 examples. So this is from whatever year, I can't remember what year it is. And so they have to write an essay about whether a book can affect a person's life. And they can agree or disagree with this statement, but they need to support their arguments with reasons and examples. So one structure would be to have the introduction, a body paragraph with idea 1 plus reasons and examples of why a book can affect a person's life or why it can't affect a person's life, and then idea 2 and then idea 3 and then a conclusion. 2 ideas are really the minimum. 3 ideas are better than 2. Another structure would be to spend the first body paragraph with a discussion of the concept of books changing lives, and then 2 ideas to illustrate this, how it does this, what the reasons are there for thinking this, and any examples, and then a conclusion. So there's not just one way of answering the question. There are multiple ways of doing it. Another example is, what are the most important skills needed to succeed in the 21st century workplace? Guidance is given. You need to discuss at least 2 skills. So 2 skills are the minimum, and you need to give reasons and arguments to support your viewpoint. So a structure would be this: body paragraph 1, skill 1 and reasons. Skill 2 and reasons in paragraph 2, skill 3 and reasons in body paragraph 3. If they can only think of 2 skills, there would only be 2 body paragraphs. Or the first paragraph could be a discussion of why skills are actually important. In general, this is a general discussion. And then in skill 1 and skill 2, those paragraphs are specific discussion of what are the most important skills. So again, there's a variety of ways to respond to this. This question do you agree whether you should be critical about the information you read online? Again, they could agree or disagree. And this should be clear in the introduction, whether they agree or disagree. And then the rest of the essay should be reasons and justifications and examples for their opinion, which is made clear in the introduction. So let's talk about generating ideas, which I mentioned earlier in the first video. In the exam, it's too late. So we need to prepare them to have opinions and ideas and examples to use for all the possible topics which might appear in the exam. And I suggested they collect topic notes as they go through Year 10, Year 11, Year 12, so that they're prepared with something to say on the topic which might occur. This is useful not just for the exam, the written exam. It's also useful for the spoken exam, where they'll have to discuss different topics. It's useful for international exams which they may take, and it's useful for their general development to actually become good citizens, to actually have thought through topics, so that they actually have opinions which are justified with examples and reasons, and not just regurgitating whatever the fashionable opinion is. So really we need to explore the topics with our students and find out if the fashionable opinion is actually correct. So this is all part of educating the students in a general sense. So this is a very important part of what we should do in years 10, 11 and 12. So let's look at introductions. We should discuss the purpose of the introduction with the students and look at the content and the structure, look at examples, or send the students to find examples and practice writing. Now the first paragraph, the introduction, should outline the topic, provide background information necessary, and outline the evidence you'll present and it should state your thesis. So let's look at an example. So this is the one about being critical about the information you read online. So the structure here is there's a hook, a provocative statement at the beginning, and then background, and then the thesis statement. So the hook is, we are swimming in a sea of information, misinformation, fake news and propaganda. And then the background, we're exposed to huge amounts of information and different channels, and lots of people are using this to inform and manipulate us. And then the thesis statement is split into two. So one is generally about the information we're exposed to, and then the last one is specifically about the information we read online, and this is what we'll deal with in the essay. Then we should teach our students to write good paragraphs. So we need to discuss the structure of paragraphs, look at examples, and practice writing paragraphs. We don't necessarily have to write full essays all the time. We could research topics and then write paragraphs about topics. So full essays are not just the only thing we should be thinking about writing. They need to practice writing paragraphs. There are different approaches to paragraphs here. There's a classical approach which you can have a look at. There's a link here so you can go and read more about it. The Rogerian and the Tolmin approach, however you say his name. So you can look at those approaches and think about which might be best for your students, or the students could choose which might be best. The classical one's the easiest one to start with. But each body paragraph should have a topic sentence, and ideally this should be the first sentence. And ideally the topic should be at the beginning of the sentence, not at the end of the sentence. We don't need to wait to find out what the paragraph is about. So ideally, the topic sentence will be a straightforward declaration of what the paragraph is about. And there need to be examples, research, statistics, studies, and text citations in certain kinds of essays. In the examinations, we wouldn't be expecting them to produce statistics and studies and things like that. The examination is more about opinion with examples, not necessarily facts and figures. So let's have a look at an example. The first sentence here tells us immediately what the paragraph is about. It's about public transport, and then defines public transport, just basically lists them. And then the thesis of the paragraph is that they should be developed by local and national governments. So that's what the paragraph is about, reasons why these should be developed by local and national governments. And then we have referencing, so these refers back to the trams, buses, trolleybuses, etc. And it tells us why they're a good idea. And then a specific example in the green sentence about a bus. But then we have a contrast with however, which means but. So this is a problem. And then we have a concluding sentence of how the governments should overcome this problem. Now, presenting and discussing data, I suggest that data is or are, depending on your grammatical decisions, are not important in an argumentative essay. Examples and reasons and opinions are important. So it's not like the research essay, which you're going to be presenting data. Here we're just presenting reasons why and to support the argument. So in this example sentence, the idea of international laws, that's presenting the topic of the paragraph, and an example is given, and then a comment about this. But then we go into a concession. So this topic sentence is split into different parts. Only really the first part and the example is the topic sentence. We immediately go into a contrast here. And then the next sentence links back to the suggestion in the first sentence, and then there's opinion about this. So the green is the writer's opinion. So this is the most important thing about this paragraph. The writer's opinion is clear what the writer thinks about these ideas, and the writer doesn't think much about these ideas. Then the conclusion. And the conclusion needs to be clearly marked, not just running on from the previous paragraph. So leave a space or clearly indent the first line so it's clear it's a new paragraph. Leaving a space is the safest thing to do. So in the conclusion, about the conclusion, we need to discuss the purpose of the conclusion, the content, look at examples and practice writing. So the conclusion, here I've got an extract from a website which you can visit, and it suggests we tie together the main points, we reiterate the main points, and we don't include new ideas or new arguments. We don't undermine our arguments, and we don't use concluding phrases like to sum up or in conclusion, because obviously it's the final paragraph and we don't need this. Again, these sentence initial cohesive devices are much more important for spoken presentations. Well, let's look at this example. So the red sentence returns to the thesis of the essay, and then the blue sentences are a discussion, a summary of what the writer talked about in the essay, and then the final sentence is a concluding sentence summarizing the whole opinion presented in the essay. So with our students, we need to look at the structure of essays. We need to help them understand the questions. we need to spend a lot of time generating ideas on all the common topics, not just for our exam, but for other exams they might do and for their future prospects. If they go to an interview for a university, a place at university, they might be asked questions about different topics. Just talking about topics and thinking about them and developing our students' opinions is perhaps the most important thing we can do. But then they need to be able to write about it. So we need to look at writing an introduction, writing paragraphs, teaching them how to present examples and opinions within these paragraphs, and how to write a clear conclusion.